Paleo is extremely nutrient dense, as I mentioned before. Sorry, I want to mention this chart here in the data comes from the infamous robwolf.com, so I want to thank him for that. And this is from Matt Lalonde, another incredible researcher in the paleo community. And Matt presented this data originally at the Ancestral Health Symposium a couple of years back, and he did it because there's a big problem with most nutrient density scales. There are a lot of problems, actually, but we don't have time to go into all of them. So the main problem is that most nutrient density scales penalize foods for having high energy density, meaning being high in calories, high saturated fat content, and sodium. So if any food has sodium, saturated fat, or it happens to be high in calories, like fat, for example, or meat that has a substantial amount of fat content, they lowered it on the nutrient density scale, even if it had nothing to do with the actual concentration of nutrients. So Matt wanted to see what a nutrient density scale would look like if you actually just measured nutrients and you didn't penalize foods for containing fat and sodium or being high in calories. And he made some other very important modifications, which you'll just have to trust me about. So as you can see here, the text is small, but organ meats are by far the most nutrient-dense food. So now you all know I'm constantly harping on you to eat liver. It's orders of magnitude higher in nutrient density than even beef down here. Herbs and spices, that's another reason to use these in your cooking, not just for flavor. They actually are extremely nutrient-dense, even in small amounts. Nuts and seeds are next. I put an asterisk there because, as I mentioned before, some foods contain phytic acid, which inhibits mineral absorption, and nuts and seeds are pretty much on the top of the list in terms of phytic acid content. So if you're eating a lot of nuts and seeds, you want to be soaking them beforehand for 12 to 18 hours at least, and then either dehydrating them or roasting them at low temperatures to break down the phytic acid and make the considerable amount of nutrients that they contain more absorbable and bioavailable. Then we have cacao, so chocolate lovers rejoice here. It's one of the most nutrient-dense foods there is. Fish and seafood, beef, lamb, veal, wild game, vegetables, raw, pork, eggs, dairy, poultry, processed meat. Cooked vegetables didn't even make it on this list, but there is an important caveat here, which is that this nutrient density scale is based on only the nutrients that we unequivocally know are beneficial for human health, and that's like all of these vitamins and the typical minerals. It did not include any phytochemicals or antioxidants, which tend to be found in very high concentrations in fruits and vegetables. And I think now, I would argue, and I think Matt would probably agree, that the science behind those is very compelling, and it's very clear that we need a substantial amount of those in our diet to be healthy. So the only caveat I would have with this chart is that if we included those antioxidants and phytochemicals, fruits and vegetables would probably appear higher than they appear now. So the last, it's sort of, we're still on the critique that paleo's not nutritionally complete. The last aspect of that is that you'll hear some RDs saying, well, you can't do a paleo diet. It doesn't have grains. You know, we need grains to be healthy, don't we? No, we don't, actually. And grains are not the superfoods we've been led to believe they are. They're low on the nutrient density scale. So if you'd have to go, you know, there's vegetables and a whole bunch of other foods before whole grains are about right here. And that's nice, or that's not nice, but the fact is 80% of the grains that we eat in the US are processed and refined. So, and that they're at the very bottom of the scale, right next to sugar and industrial seed oils, which have almost no nutritive value at all. Grains also tend to be missing important nutrients, as I mentioned before. They don't have a broad micronutrient profile. They're lacking in some essential amino acids. They tend to be very low in terms of the bioavailability of those nutrients because they contain phytic acid and other nutrient inhibitors. And there's nothing in grains that we can't get from paleo type of foods in a much more bioavailable way. Does this mean we should absolutely never eat any grains under any circumstances, no matter what? I don't think so, personally. I think that if you eliminate grains from your diet, and then at some point you want to add them back in, and you're willing to go through the preparation steps required to make the nutrients more bioavailable, as groups like the Weston A. Price advocate, soaking, sometimes quite extensively soaking in acid medium like kefir or lemon juice to break down those nutrients, rinsing, and then cooking. If you want to do that And if you don't do that so much that they start to replace more nutrient-dense foods, then I think it's hard to make an argument against that. But most people aren't willing to go to those lengths of preparation, and that's absolutely fine too. We can unequivocally say that grains are not required for human health. Otherwise, we wouldn't be standing here having this conversation, would we?